Hi, welcome to Divorce Diaries. We hope that we're going to put together for you a podcast that's going to give a lot of interesting perspectives and new ideas on looking at the divorce world. In the Orthodox world, many people sometimes just see it in a very generic, they're just the religious Jews. They don't realize that there's a variety of different practicing Jews, and even more so, a much more bigger variety of voices and perspectives within the Orthodox community. These voices consist of many different types, but one that sometimes feels it gets not heard enough and even overlooked is the divorced world. The current divorce rate is something like 10%, some people even say 20%, but it's a voice that exists and we feel it needs to get heard, and that's what Shira and I want to try and accomplish with this podcast.
Yes. And we hopefully have many people lined up. Actually, we do. Many therapists, dating coaches, shadchanim, and also divorced people from different types of backgrounds, religious, non-religious, Hasidim, etc., to join us and tell their perspective and their experiences. So it's really, really exciting.
And I actually have to just add, when we told people about the idea, there was like, I don't want to say jump, but there were people that said without seeing the podcast, because it hadn't even been created yet, they just said, I'm so passionate about this. Some people on a WhatsApp group or several WhatsApp groups were just already going on about their own stories. And so we asked some people to compose for us a list of questions, because like we said, it's going to be about sharing different perspectives. And since both Shira and I are divorced, we thought we would start off with our own perspectives by interviewing each other.
Yeah. So without further ado, here you go.
Okay, I'm
Avi,
excited.
how long were you married?
So I was married for 1 year. When I spoke with my rabbis and therapists, that whenever a marriage doesn't work out, you also have therapists involved, or
Yeah.
most of the times, they both said the same thing, which is the first year of marriage should be like a roller coaster. Yeah, there's gonna be bumps, but whenever it's too much, that's a bad sign. And so they both told me you have to make a tough decision,
Mm.
and so I had to make that tough decision.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to say why it didn't work out?
So, what I want to say is something I heard from a dating coach that I thought was very wise. I told her that I felt like a lot of dates I was going on with divorced people, like I'm like, am I doing something wrong that I'm making them talk about their ex? And she said, no, some people just never got over it yet. And the whenever you go on a date, you should never mention my ex was this, my ex was that. That's not the right way to go. And more so when if someone says, "Well, why didn't it work out?" you should give an answer along the lines of it was just a really challenging time. We obviously were not the right match. We tried very hard, but it just didn't work out.
That's a beautiful answer. Beautiful. I also wanted to add to that I dated someone. I was pretty freshly divorced at the time, and he and I really we liked each other. But after the second date, he called me and said, I like you, Shira, but I do still feel that the divorce is very fresh for you, and you did talk a lot about your experiences. Um, and I think that maybe down the line, maybe down the road, we can get back together. But right now, I feel that maybe there needs to be some more healing on your end. And I appreciated that so much because he was right. I don't want to bring my experiences or trauma into a new relationship. It's not fair to anyone, not fair to me, not fair to them. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Can you share any lessons you learned from your divorce experience?
Well, I guess I could say I learned that you should always remember to leave the toilet seat down.
Yeah.
But on a more serious note, what I learned, and I didn't learn it right after the divorce, it took a lot of reflection, is that one of the worst things you could do when you get divorced is walk away saying, I was perfect and I wasn't the problem. Usually a marriage has, obviously it's not always the case, but a marriage usually always has something when it doesn't work out where both people can look back and say, how could I have handled things better? How could I have done something better? You're not going to grow as a person, and you're not going to grow and prepare yourself for a second marriage if your answer is I was perfect and because then whatever mistakes you did make, so it took me a long time to realize and work on some of the mistakes that I made, and hopefully going forward, God willing, I'll get married and not make those mistakes again.
Beautiful.
So let me ask you, what like made you want to do this podcast with me?
It's a great question. So, I originally wanted to write a book about divorce in the Orthodox community because I do feel that it's a very taboo subject, and there are a lot of assumptions, I think, made about divorced people in the Orthodox community. And I just thank God I'm so busy. I didn't have the time. I didn't even know where to start. So I thought about doing a podcast. My brother encouraged me to do one, but I didn't know where to begin. And then we met each other through this WhatsApp group. And you mentioned that you wanted to do a podcast. And I just was so excited. It felt like a gift from Hashem, just handing it to me like, this is your opportunity, Shira. So take it and run. So I'm
Yeah.
really excited.
Yeah, I remember. Do you
Yeah.
think you'll ever write that book?
You know, I do want to at the right time. Um, we'll see.
No,
We'll see. It's a
I'll de-
goal.
I'll definitely be one of the people that's gonna read it. So how long were you married for?
I was married for 21 years. I got married really young. Got engaged at 18. I got married at 19. I had my first kid at 19. Um, so there were good years. There were, and my 6 beautiful children. Um, but it didn't last, and I had to get a divorce.
Unfortunately. Were you scared of like any stigmas within the community? Did that like make you stay married longer? I have to be honest. Like sometimes I struggle all the time when I've gone to these divorce Shabbatons, single events, and someone's like, "I was married for 20 years, and I knew after the first 2 years it wasn't gonna work." Or some people are like, "I even knew after under the chuppah, I knew it wasn't gonna work." I just one person on that WhatsApp group we're part of said that his mother-in-law, I'm sorry, his mother said that it's not too late to. But so were there any stigmas that made you stay in the marriage, or and yeah,
No, I don't think so. I wanted to stay in the marriage because I I didn't want to get divorced. I mean, no one normal people don't get married with the idea that they'll just get divorced. I wanted it to work out desperately. But it came to a point where I didn't really think that there was any other choice at the time. But I wasn't worried about other people, what they thought about me, because I can't live life like that. That's just not fair to me. It's not the way to live life. So no, I wasn't worried about the stigma so much.
and just like a follow up to that, like what about like I know a lot of people have told me they stayed in it for the kids. Do you
Mm.
believe in staying in a marriage for the kids, or does that only go so far?
I think it really depends on the situation. If it's really individual, I don't think that it's appropriate to stay in a marriage for the sake of the kids. If the marriage is just to a point where it's unhealthy and it's hurting you more than to get divorced, then I don't think it's always the proper way. And also, kids see everything, they feel everything. So even if you don't say anything, they know. So if you can, I think that's a beautiful thing to do. If you can manage it and not let on that there are issues. But I would say, me personally, at that point, it wasn't. It wasn't. No, I had to leave.
Anyway, we'll go back to the questions in one second. I just want to add that I did hear from a rabbi once, and it made an impression on me. He said that in the 1950s, bef- right now the divorce rate in the Orthodox community is rising. It used to be people just stayed married,
Mhm.
and he said it was a stigma. Whether it was a stigma, we just don't do that. But he said like a lot of people now go under the chuppah, like, oh, if it doesn't work out, I'll just get divorced. Again, I don't know if that's true or not, but I remember
Right.
he gave a drush on that, and it stuck in my head.
Right. So, a lot of people say it's like like disposable generation, that if it doesn't work out, then we'll just leave. I really don't think it's fair to say that. I mean, definitely there are people who can do that, who are capable of doing that, but I also do think that a lot of people don't realize how traumatic and how devastating getting divorced is.
Oh, next question, I guess. So, do you feel supported by your community and friends?
I do. I feel very supported by my community and friends. Um, my friends have been there for me through thick and thin. Um, and also, I I do have a rabbi now, whereas before I didn't have a rabbi, and he is communicative and he responds quickly to my questions. So I feel supported by my rabbi as well. But it did take me years to find the courage to find a rabbi for myself because I don't know, it's very scary. For me, it was very scary to be on my own and to ask a rabbi certain things. But my family has been supportive as well, and I'm really thankful for that because I know a lot of people don't have that. But me personally, I do. And in our community as well, there is a group of volunteers who help single women um, building furniture, making dinners, and I've definitely benefited from that. And there's the organization Sister to Sister.
I want to ask about the just since you mentioned that there's an organization, that's a beautiful thing. Like, I remember one person told me that they felt that, as a single mother, they're overlooked. That was actually one of the ideas I had when I thought of this podcast with you.
Hmm.
And I know that may not be everyone's story, but do you think, especially since you're a single mother, do you think like there's enough people that are conscious of, oh, maybe I should invite her for Shabbos or make sure she has everything she needs? Or so what are your thoughts on that? Because I know there are people who have told me they feel that that's one of the biggest areas where there's an overlooking.
Yeah, I definitely think that it can happen. Um, yeah, I do. But it's also important to get yourself out there as hard as it is. Um, I think when people see me, they remember. And it's also important to keep up your friends as you had before. And but I do think that the women have a support group. And also, I don't know if actually the men have a lot of support. Like I think men need more support, in my opinion. That's a whole nother topic. But yeah, I do think that I do. Yeah.
Okay, after you got divorced, did you feel like you were being judged? Did you like again? That's like a follow up to the question.
Mhm.
Do you feel like you were again, like we said, these questions are not our own. They were just a bunch of people
Yeah.
submitted them. Did you feel judged, supported, or something in between?
Well, why don't you answer that first?
So my experience is a little different, and I know like my marriage, very shortly into it, um, I saw what was the challenges, and I know like a lot of times I was just like calling friends all the time, and some people told me that that's not the I was just it became, how do I deal with this? How do I deal with that? And when I made a decision to separate, one of the things I felt like is I can't take my friends and my supporters on a roller coaster. Like, it can't be okay. I'm gonna get back together, and then I'm gonna just go back and forth with this roller coaster. So I felt I had their support, but if I would have made it a roller coaster, they wouldn't have gone along with that ride.
Hmm. Okay, I hear. I had a little bit of a different experience than you. I did feel that my friends and my family, they didn't pressure me either way, and I know that I was a roller coaster because I didn't want to get divorced. I wanted to stay, and when I wanted to stay, they said, "We'll support you," and when I wanted to leave, they said, "We'll support you." So I had a different experience. I wanted to touch a little bit on the did I feel judged? So there's one thing that I want to say is throughout this experience, I know that people have judged me, but also I feel it's also really important not to live your life thinking what other people think about you. So whether they judged me or not, I know my truth. I know Hashem knows my truth, and I can't live my life thinking what other people are going to think of me. And if they want to judge me, they can go ahead. But I decided that I'm not going to live that way.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's incredible. You want to ask me?
Sure. Let's do number 9. I like this one. This is a whole topic in itself. How did your beliefs or faith evolve during this time?
Oh, so my beliefs and faith is very interesting. I believe what powers my Judaism is the strong emunah and bitachon that the Ribono Shalom loves me and that He only has my good in store.
Mhm.
I use that as a very big principle for my Judaism, and it works really well when things are going well, but at the same time, the Brisker Rav and others said, there's no test of emunah and bitachon when things are going well. But when things go not the way that you're planning, whether it's divorce, losing a job, and then getting divorced,
Mm.
the whole world falling apart,
Mhm.
it becomes a much bigger challenge to support your Judaism on that. And that's where you grow. And that's really where my Judaism has tried to evolve and grow is wor- even with things not being necessarily the way I was hoping they would work out, still believing and still pushing everything on that foundation that Hashem loves me and everything He does is for my good.
That's beautiful.
I want to ask that question to you also. So, how do you think your beliefs or your faith evolved during your period of going through divorce
Mhm.
and then after divorce?
It's a great question. And again, this is just my perspective. And I want to preface this answer by saying that there's no right or wrong, whether someone's amuna dips a little bit or gets stronger throughout their experience of divorce, because it's a very traumatic event. So I have friends who had to step away from practicing Judaism, from doing the mitzvahs that they did, or and I don't judge them for a second. Like I understand the struggle. I really do. And because of that, I definitely needed to learn daily about Emuna and Bitachon, and that Hashem loves me. That was a huge, huge part of me surviving the divorce, because if I didn't know that and truly believe that, I don't know where I would be today. I'm not saying that to be fancy schmancy, or I genuinely believe that Hashem loves me, and I know that some people don't think this, but I personally need to think this, that there's no bad that happens. Everything that happens, we're human and we can have emotions and react to things because we're human and we're supposed to, but ultimately everything is for our best. And while we're going through it, it certainly doesn't feel that way, but I have to put my faith in
Yeah,
God.
that's a very interesting perspective because it's very weird. Like I lived in Lakewood for 12 years, so I kind of have a little bit of, well, it doesn't really matter how you feel. You can't say I don't feel like putting on tefillin today because I'm sad. If God commanded you to do it, you have to do it. And that was really a perspective, and I struggled with it. And I still more or less feel that you can't not put on tefillin just because you feel sad, or you can't not keep Shabbos because you're depressed. But at the same time, someone told me to read a really interesting book called Mental Health and Halacha, and I'm not going to go into that book, but it really gave me a little bit of this perspective you're talking about, that sometimes you can't look at it as black and white,
Correct.
and the mental health of a person is considered in halacha.
Yes, 100%. People have to know that. I don't think a lot of people do. Okay. Um, who are you in your marriage versus who are you now, Avi?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. Who am I? I would like to think that I'm still the same person in certain respects,
Mhm.
but I would also like to think that I grew in other respects. Um, and what I really hope I'm not, which I've heard a lot of stories, is that sometimes people have a ureta. They actually go down, all of a sudden they're not going to minyan all the time, and they drop this mitzvah or that mitzvah. Like I said before, in that respect, I don't like the concept of compromise. And I think that no matter what your emotional state is, you have to push yourself to do the mitzvahs as much as possible. But I'd like to think that I grew and I matured from my experiences. So I think that if I gave that as an answer 100%, there's truth to it. But I still have, you're always working on yourself. And I think that, you know, a Gemara that I heard that really stuck with me a long time ago, and I'm not going to quote the Gemara. I'll just tell you the idea of the Gemara is that whatever Hashem puts you through, and wherever he takes you, he wants you to learn something from it and to grow from it. And that's what I really hope, that even though divorce is not a fun experience, I hope that's what I've done. And I want to ask that question to you also. So, who were you before and who do you think you are now?
Well, my life is very, very different now, I have to say. I'm very happy right now. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I thank God, I'm very, very appreciative of that I was able to do that. So getting divorced and being on my own was definitely a learning curve for me, and I'm rediscovering who I am. It almost seems sometimes like it's a midlife crisis, but it's not. It's like actually learning who I am as Shira, and I'm loving who I am, and I just feel like I'm more self-aware, and I'm more willing to work on different things in my life, like new things, like this podcast, which I don't think I would have been able to. Um, for different reasons while I was married. But, and like you said, we can see looking back also how we have the potential to grow. And it's always a choice to grow, by the way. Like sometimes you can just, say, I'm not going to, I'm a victim mindset, which is definitely never helps anyone. So it's very important not to get into that victim mindset, but to use that challenge to grow. So I hope that I've used the challenge and become a different person through this growth, because I think that's what I want for myself. I think that's what Hashem wants from us, you know?
Wow, that's really incredible. So I guess I'll ask you this one. How did you handle telling your family and extended community that you were going to get divorced?
So I really didn't tell anyone. I mean, my close friends knew. They were very supportive, but, and my family was also very supportive. I did tell my family, but like, I didn't feel like it was anyone's business, to tell you the truth, because a lot of people want the gossip. And I really try not to do that. So I kept it quiet. And if people found out, they found out. A lot of times I would mention to someone, like, I got divorced. And they would say, no, I didn't know. And so I was actually happy that people didn't know, because it means that people were not gossiping. So, but no, I chose to keep it quiet. And if I had to tell someone, I did. Otherwise, I didn't.
Yeah, I know. I know when I got divorced or just separated at that time, and all of a sudden I was seen. And I lived in Lakewood before I got married, and all of a sudden people saw me back in show every day,
Mm,
and I knew what was happening. That people were starting to say, "Oh, it didn't work out,"
mm,
and I had gotten married at 36, and that didn't feel so good because it was only a year. And so I don't think I'm not saying anyone talked, but it was definitely something that didn't feel good. And I remember, I recently saw someone who had that same experience. He lived in Passaic, got married, and then I saw him at back at the wherever he worked, and I knew because of my own experience, I knew what happened, and I immediately tried to give him words of chizuk and encouragement, because I know that it's not fun when you know that everyone can figure out,
yeah.
oh, that didn't work out.
Yeah. No one wants to be talked about. Don't
Okay.
talk about people.
Yeah.
Number 13. This is a great one. Were there moments you struggled with amuna or felt angry?
So I think, and this is something actually I mentioned in a therapy session one on one. I said, I feel angry with Hashem. And it just, I felt guilty about that
Hmm.
because, like I said, I pushed my Judaism with a concept of Hashem loves me. Well, if Hashem loves me, why is he putting me? I mean, I got married at 36. I already went through all the struggle. Why do I have to go through this? Like, what was I in a previous life? And I struggled a lot with that.
Yeah.
And, there are psukim in the Torah that talk about how Hashem loves the Jewish people, for sure. And I guess that implies he also loves every single Jew. Rav Moshe Feinstein was supposedly, he, he was telling someone, giving them tochacha about fighting with another person, and Ramosha, the guy said to Ramosha, he said he's a Russia, and Ramosha said back, Hashem loves the biggest Russia more than you or I love the biggest tzaddik.
Wow.
We can't fathom Hashem's love for us, and we don't always necessarily feel it in things we go through. But I definitely did have a feeling of anger, feeling like God just, was pushing me to the side. But that's the challenge, and to realize Hashem loves me. Not to say, oh, I must have been a horrible human being in a previous life. Um, just to realize that Hashem loves us, and whatever He's doing, He knows what's best for us.
Yeah.
I want to. How did you feel? Like, I did a year. You
Right.
can't compare that to 20 years.
Yeah.
So how did you struggle with your Amuna, and did you feel angry at God at times when things weren't working out?
Yeah. Um, Definitely. I think it's very human to feel that, and it's okay to feel those things. Uh, it's indescribable, I guess, to feel the hurt and the anger and what did I do wrong? What did I do to deserve this? I was such a good girl and I did everything that I was supposed to do, and this is happening to me. I definitely went through that, and
I've heard that. By the way, I'm sorry to interrupt.
it's okay.
I've heard a lot of more than you're not the only person. You mentioned to me you went to the regular base Yaakov
Yes.
system,
Yes.
and there are, I've heard that in many different versions where
Yeah.
someone went through the regular system
Hmm.
and they're like, "What did I
What
do
did I
wrong?"
do? Yeah, I did everything. And I also have to remember the gifts, though, that I got out of being married. I'm just realizing that now. So, yeah, I was angry, and that's why I had to really think about my Amuna and work on my Amuna. And I have a friend who, when I would say something really hard happened or bad happened, they would say Mizmor Letodah. And so I got into the habit of saying Mizmor Letodah when I was going through a hard time, of just thanking you, Hashem, because I know that everything that happens for me is ultimately the best. Again, I know some people don't understand that, but for me, that works for me. And so I think by doing that, that helped me be less angry and remember my goal in this life, and remember I'm here for a reason and everything happens for a reason, and not to be angry, because being angry is not going to help anyone.
Right. I think you have to recognize that it exists inside of you and then
Absolutely.
cope with it. And then, I think it's okay to be angry with God,
Yes.
but then to realize it's an emotion and not to translate it into God's wrong, I'm right, God messed up, and I'm a victim.
Correct.
That an emotion is one thing, but then you have to say this is a challenge,
Hmm.
and my nisayon is to overcome this emotion.
Yeah.
And I just want to add, because I was actually davening shachris today, and I realized this: if you ever want to gauge how much you love Hashem, how much hana, how much joy do you get? If you Do you feel any joy when you say Psuka de Zimra or Tehillim or Hallel? I feel like I was just davening chakras today, and I said that's a really good way of gauging. Do I love Hashem back?
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's
It's
something I
beautiful.
just took today.
Beautiful. Okay. What's something people in the Orthodox world don't talk about but should when it comes to divorce?
That's a hard question. What's something they don't talk about? Where did we get that question? I know most of them came from the WhatsApp group when we asked people. What is something that people don't talk about but they should? I would say, and I don't want to get into this topic. I know we're gonna have therapists. Um, I'm not trained or the right person to speak about this, but I would say abuse. I would
Mm,
say that it unfortunately exists, and it's something that people have to know is not acceptable, whether it's verbal, emotional, or physical, and it can't be covered up. And I think that that's something that needs to be discussed a lot more, and a flashlight shown. But I am not the person to do that. That is not my training. But I definitely, being part of the divorce world, it's something I know that people try to hush hush,
yeah.
and
Yeah. That's if I could add on to that, like I definitely agree. And I do think that um kala teachers, lesson teachers, or mentors, who's ever mentoring people, whether you're engaged or not engaged, or dating coaches, they need to spell out what abuse is, red flags. Um, and if someone is engaged, they also have to understand that it's not too late to break off an engagement if there are red flags, you know? So I do think that a a lot of things are accepted in our community that also should not be accepted and are very taboo. And again, like, I'm not a professional, you're not a professional, and
We're gonna have them on
we're
the
gonna have
show.
them on the show, so tune in. But I think it's a very big topic that we should
And I
cover.
just want to also add one more thing that and again, let the therapist deal with this. I just want to point it out. M- Some abuse is very hard to identify,
Correct.
meaning that manipulation could be a form of abuse, or there's a concept known as love bombing,
Yes.
where you've heard of love bombing.
Yes.
Where the person's showering you with love and gifts and compliments, and then they take it away. You're like, what? Where did it go?
Mhm.
And that's a form of manipulation and
Mhm.
abuse.
Yeah.
And I spoke to a dating coach about that, and they said yes, that is a form of abuse that
Yeah.
people use.
Yeah, and you're always waiting for it to come back, and so it
And they
keeps you
give it
in the
in drips.
game.
They give it in
Yeah.
drips,
Correct.
and then they
It's like a
take it
dopamine
away.
hit, and then you're yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
So
I
we'll get to
think
that.
that's time for maybe one more question.
Yeah. Okay. You wanna ask this one?
Yes. What message would you give to someone in the community quietly struggling in their marriage right now?
Yeah, I know a lot of people like that. Not a lot. I won't say a lot. I have some friends. I just wanna be there for them. And no, like, I think some divorced people I've gone out with have told me, I think that divorced women tell their friends to get divorced. That is not true at all. At least not in my case. Maybe some people do. But divorce is last option. So all I can do is to be there for my friends and encourage them and listen to them, not judge them, not judge their ex, because there also are always two sides to a story, even if they're my best friend. You know, I understand that there are always two perspectives. Um, so just being there for them, going out, making them feel loved and heard, I think is crucial.
Okay, so these questions came from more or less a WhatsApp group that we're probably on both. We're on one together for sure. We're on probably a number of WhatsApp groups, and that's where these questions came from. That's me and Shira sharing our perspective. We're hoping to do a lot more episodes. We already have, I know, 3 shadchanim that deal with divorced people that want to be on. I know a number of therapists that have already expressed interest. We don't have, we have to set up an official email and things like that. So we'll get those things, and you can reach out to us if you want to be on the show. And I guess for now, if we'll probably create an email, divorcediaries@gmail.com. For now, if you watch this podcast and you're interested, that'll hopefully be created very shortly. So divorcediaries@gmail.com. And as things evolve, that email may become contact at Divorce Diaries. But anyway, that's a wrap on my end. I hope that we added value. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm really looking forward to the guests that we're going to have on the show. Shira, last words.
I think we've covered a lot of ground and we have so much more to cover. So thank you for tuning in and listening, and hopefully you'll see us again.